reading academic articles can be a really, really difficult, sometimes painful experience. But there are some easy, simple tricks that if you'll do every time, it will make it so much easier, so much less frustrating, so much less time consuming, and so much more effective when you go to actually use those articles to write your paper. Thing number one you should do is just skim through it. Read the abstract, actually. If it has an abstract, an explanation of, what the article's about, check that out and make sure it has to do with the research you're looking for. If you don't have a really clear idea of what your research question is, you should figure that out before you spend too much time trying to read academic journals that you might not even have any use for. Okay, so specific and narrow. Make sure you have a good research question. Okay, when you do, skim through it. After you read the abstract, if it's there, skim through it and make sure that it's, what you want. As soon as you know it's probably what you want, and probably before you skim through the entire article, print it out. This is important. This is really helpful. And email yourself a permalink to that article so you can find it again. You'd be really surprised how difficult it can be sometimes to find an article the second time if you didn't send yourself a permalink to it. Okay, so watch my using research databases video to see what I mean by permalink and what I do not mean by permalink. Next thing you do, skim through the article. Just read like the first sentence or two of each paragraph. All right, that should be enough to let you know the general idea of what's going on in that paragraph. And if it has nothing to do with the research question, what you need, draw a line through that paragraph so you never have to waste your time reading that again. Okay, so make sure it's not what you want, and then just cross it out. After you've done that, go through again and read it a little bit more closely, and now it's time to annotate. All right, annotate means making notes. Okay, write things in the margin. Maybe you learned how to highlight things, right? Underline the main points or something. That really has so much more to do with rote memorization, where professors, teachers are treating you like someone who's just supposed to memorize facts and regurgitate. That is not the best way to make you smarter, teach you stuff. And it's not the most effective way to get stuff that you can use for your research papers. So go ahead and underline things. Sure, highlight them, that's great. But also annotate. Make notes in the margin. This can include things like thoughts you have as you go along, questions you have, other sources, other information that's related to the topic that's going on, things that maybe contradict it. Okay, so that kind of note is the first type of note that's really useful to annotate. Do you see why? I mean, is it obvious? Because these notes that you're scribbling in the margins may help you with really good ideas of things you can say in your final paper. Okay, now you may think, oh, I'll remember that as you think things as you go through. You won't. Okay, first off, you're going to be reading all these dense articles, and guess what? You have to read them more than once. Most of them just don't sink in with just one reading. A lot of them really are really dense. So there's another tip. Accept that fact. Okay? Don't get all frustrated that it takes you hours of research. That's a fact of life. That if you want to create anything of any value, sorry, that's a requirement. Okay? So set aside time and start early. I can't stress that enough either. If you try and do it all last minute, it's going to drive you crazy because you can't do that much. It's too much to ask of your brain. So start early. Annotate. A second thing you can do as you annotate is to evaluate the article itself, critique it. Okay? Maybe in the past you thought, oh, these things are written by experts, these are professors and doctors and PhDs and rocket scientists, and all this stuff, and what do I, a lowly college student, have to say about it? But if you'll start doing this, if you'll start to critique it, you'll realize you have a lot to say about it, and you have very valid points you can make about it as well. This comes into rhetorical analysis. Okay, so you can critique things like, do you notice, are they explaining things clearly? Are they supporting their claims clearly or not? Do they show signs of bias or signs of really fairness and thoroughness? Is it credible and trustworthy? Is it boring? Okay, maybe it's boring to you, but is it boring to the audience that they actually wrote that for? You know, the people who really read those journals because it has to do with their profession. Is it boring to them, or is it useful? Does it get to the point quickly enough? Does it show the organization, you know where the article's going? Does it provide useful statistics? That kind of stuff. Okay, so when I talk about rhetorical analysis, we'll go into more of that. And then the last thing I'll say there is, you know, put it aside for a day or something, go back and skim over, you know, read over it again, all right, to make sure, especially if it's something that you didn't understand all the way the first time, read through it again until you understand it a little bit more in depth. Annotate some more, cross out things that are no use to you if you haven't already crossed them out. And can you see how much time this will save by crossing stuff out so you don't have to read the whole thing, just read the parts that are pertinent and helpful to your project, and B, by annotating so you have your thoughts written down and you don't have to think of it all over it again later. And these notes you make in the margins may turn into a considerable part of your paper about things that you want to say about your topic. Just, you know, be thinking about what's going to go into your paper and what you'll want to be able to find quickly again and mark those.